Yes.
I'm completely there. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, and I have your slides, and you say to me next slide, and I will change to the next.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, let's first introduce myself. My name is Koos Krijnders. Till 5 years ago, I just was working as project leader, whatever, in the Netherlands for geoinformation, working with a lot of communities, municipalities, etc. But now I'm retired, more or less, but I do a lot of work for the Dutch Red Cross Society and especially the Missing Maps project. And that's, of course, crowd mapping, where we do a lot of things. I will first tell a little bit about Missing Maps for those who are not familiar with it, but then I do some new developments within this area. So next slide, please. Yes, next slide.
Yeah.
With me?
I'm trying.
Trying, okay. On the next slide, you see Missing Maps. It started some 10 years ago after a big earthquake in Haiti. And when Rob is starting the movie on the right hand, right? Yes, that one. When you hear the noise, I continue speaking. This was completely unorganized. There was OpenStreetMap existed. There was an earthquake. The maps of Haiti, they were in a building. They were printed, but all these printed maps were devastated because the building was devastated. So there was nothing anymore. There were satellite images and a community of mappers, not existing more or less, but they started to map Port-au-Prince and surroundings in a very, very short period. And after that, people organized together in the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, where big NGOs like Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders come together, supported by a lot of others. They extended with a lot of other organizations. And now it's a rather big, good organized, more or less good organized organization. Next slide, please. Yes, Rob?
Yeah.
You're still there?
It has some delay.
Okay. Oh, that's the same one.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This happens, it was concentrating on areas where disasters were happening. And every time when there is a disaster, since more or less 2014, then they created, it was really an organization in 2014, and it goes on. And every time when there's a disaster where they are not mappings of the area where the disaster is, we are making maps of that area. So in 2017, the Netherlands Red Cross was in charge after a big hurricane. And when you see the small maps on the left-hand side, the left map is the map before the hurricane, and on the right-hand side, it's 2 days later after the hurricane. And you see, especially in the southern part, which is Dutch, the northern part of the island is French. And you see on the black spots that a lot of areas were added to the map with houses, buildings, etc. When you compare that image with the image on the right-hand side, and then you see the blue images over there, that are the areas where most of the aid was given in food and drinking water, energy, whatever. Especially those areas which were not on the map, that were just the areas which was really necessary to have some help. Well, the Red Cross, Dutch Red Cross was active. So here you see that after a disaster, within a few days, this is 2 days after the hurricane, the map is ready. And that's, I think, a very, very strong point. Next slide, please. Yeah, you see it now. In the last months, a lot of, this is what's called the tasking manager, the projects where the volunteers can work on, where the disasters are. And we have here the last 8 projects, and 5 or 6 of them are related to Corona, to COVID. And even these projects, they appear wherever in Mali or in Peru or whatever, all over the world. Within 2 or 3 days, they are mapped, and they are also validated, that you see on the red line, all these, except one, all these projects here are completely mapped now within a few days, and most of them are partly validated. So second pair of eyes looked at it. And in the past 5 years, you could say we saw more than 265 volunteers in the world mapping part of areas which are devastated by an earthquake, by Ebola, for example, or by whatever, hurricanes. 90 million buildings were put on the map. Nearly 2.5 million kilometers of roads were on the map. And we are now on mapping project 9,000 and something. So that's going on and on a strong way. Next slide, please. Yes. Can I have my next one, Rob? Yeah. Just a few things. We do it here in the Netherlands. We organize a lot of mapathons from the Dutch Red Cross. We do it here. It's with students. Next slide. We do it also with school children. Here you see we're working here with a group of children from age 11, 12, and they can do it. They manage to put houses on the map. We not ask them to do the streets, which is a little bit more difficult, but housing, okay. The next one, please. These are the young guys. Here you see some older guys. In the public library in Amsterdam, we have a group they came together, I should say, before Corona times, and mapping and validating especially. Yeah, next one. One of the minor points in this approach is that you just use satellite images, sometimes drone images or aerial photographs, and that field work is very essential. You see 4 buildings on the left upper. I was there and I saw this small building over there. And there's nothing, it's just people living there. No, the local man said, no, you can rent a bed over here for the night. Okay, so I looked inside and there were 4 beds and you can rent that. So it's not a house, it's a hotel or something like that. On the left-hand side, down under, it's a pump. You don't see that on the photograph. So very essential for good information to go into the field and put down the right information on the map. And that's something which is rather difficult to organize. And I think the biggest part of the maps we made are not checked in the field, but the information you put on the map during a field work is very essential. Next, please. So when you recapitulate what's done in the last 5 years, we see a lot of mappers coming up, completely volunteers. We see a very quick reaction after a disaster. We have good images. We have a good environment to work in. But we also see a lot of unexperienced mappers. So many mistakes are done. They forgot things. They don't see it. They think it's a road, but it's a river or the other way. We don't have enough validators. It's Western based. You see people from Western countries mapping. You seldom see people from countries like India or Bangladesh, wherever, mapping their own country. And more information about it, they know it. We want to use also machine learning techniques, artificial intelligence, to interpret the images, but then you have to download the image. And there's a lot of discussion about that. We can't download it, we can't just look at it in the viewer, but we got the images from large companies for free, so that's great.
You have 2 minutes left, Koos.
It's there, but yeah, when the disaster is over, we don't update the map. And especially after an earthquake or a hurricane, the map has changed. So we map the old situation, there's a disaster, but we don't update the map after the disaster. And you only map the area where disaster was, and neighboring areas, we don't do that. So there is some criticism about the situation at this time. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what missing maps want is that in 2025, we don't have to wait for a map, but the maps are already there. There are no more missing maps anymore. And we want much more that local communities, local volunteers go out and map and edit, also what's done by fieldwork, much more information. What we now do is just mapping a building, mapping a road, mapping a river. Now that's not enough for decision makers who want to ameliorate their area. Regarding, we don't have enough data for public health measures, for water and WASP, for hygiene measures, a lot of other things. And what we do want is to expand everything and OpenStreetMap, and we need 1 million volunteers to achieve this goal. Okay, let's do that. Next slide. So for doing that, you need much more, and really much more local points, local organizations. And the idea was to map in the coming years 1 billion people. Up till now, the last 5 years, we did some 150,000, 200,000 people more or less, which houses were put on the map. But we are going to do 1 billion people. It's not a typo over here. It's really 1 billion. And we want to add all places at high risk of experiencing poverty. So then you are speaking about a large part of the world. And we need some money to organize that. And we got it. We got really a huge amount of money from the Audacious project that's related to TED, T-E-D. And that's a combination of some very big funding organizations. And they fund projects which will change the world for 5 years. Okay, so we got a lot of money. We got a lot of ambitions. And we are going to spend that money in the coming years. And a lot of money, I don't know the exact amount. That's a secret, I'm afraid. But and I tell you that in the coming years, 100 people got a contract for 5 years all over the world. Then you know it's not really nothing. Okay, next slide, please.
Koos, I need to ask you to wrap up, please.
Yeah. So that's the situation now. We're setting up a lot of points where we can start the field work, and we invest in technology to go quicker from an image to a map. Next slide. That's the last one. Yeah. We're opening 4 new hubs where we are going to organize this. The first one already opened in Manila, and in the second, next month or something like that, then in Nairobi. The second one comes, and in Latin America and in the western part of Africa also a hub comes. There are a lot of local jobs coming over there, and they have to organize these 1 million volunteers to make the map with all kind of additional information, and with the field work and the maintenance which is a project for the coming years. And I think Missing Maps, it will be much more adult than it was in the past years. So, a lot of things to do, but next slide, there's one. Don't forget to work. Here you see what we have to do today in Mali, a very big map. Please, do you want to map this, dear volunteers, and also people listening to me now, to map this area? And there's a lot of things to be done just here and in a lot of other projects which are on the list of the tasking manager. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Koos.
Okay.
That's really impressive, and that's a lot of work actually. There are questions from Jaap, Willem, and Sander, so maybe we can make it a bit of a short answer, please, because we look at the time. So Jaap, Willem is asking: is there also a role for local governments? Short answer, please.
Yes, of course, there's a role for local governments. However, sometimes they are not really interested, and that's the role for OpenStreetMap is very important. The role for local government at map producing agencies, and that's of course very interesting. And map producing agencies in not the local government, but in, for example, Dutch Krijnders making maps for all over the world, also in Africa. The maps are there, but they are not available. I would like to have some more combination with these two. Yeah.
Okay, thanks again. I'm afraid we have to carry on. I see Jaap Willem has another question. Could you perhaps, let's say, do that on Slack or maybe bilaterally? Sorry for this, but I would like to go to the next session, not session, presenter. That's Levente Juhasz. So I'm Levente. I'm going to unlock you and give you presenter mode, so that you could share your screen and your webcam, please. And then, yeah, very looking forward for your presentation. Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much for inviting me to give this presentation. I hope you can see my screen right now.
Yes,
All right,
can.
Great.
Maybe we can put it in presentation mode in full screen. Not possible.
All right, now it should be working. Perfect. All right, so thanks again for inviting me. I'm going to talk about a pet project of mine that I started for fun, but hopefully it will evolve into something larger than that. So I am currently in with the Florida International University, and we are the only public research university in the Miami area. So we are very much invested in local issues. We are trying to engage with local communities. So basically that was what kickstarted this project. So I'm going to talk about coastal flooding just a little bit. So how it is in Miami. Of course, you already know it in the Netherlands. I'm going to just quickly introduce also the data economy, the data sources that are available from official sources in the United States, and then also the possibility of integrating volunteer geographic information with these. So yeah, let me just get started. So I'm originally from a landlocked country, Hungary. So I had no idea about coastal flooding before moving to Florida. But now I am aware that there are like different forms of coastal inundation. That is the sea level rise. Also, there are tidal flooding, king tides. There are basically really unusually high tides that happen a few times a year. Also, flooding can be induced by tropical storms, hurricanes. In that case, they are called storm surges. And also, since Miami has a subtropical climate, we do have extreme events that can also cause flooding. So this is a picture from my old neighborhood. It was actually, it wasn't an unusual sight to see the road flooded. It happened pretty much every month or so. This is another picture from my colleague when she was driving to work. She usually had to drive through these saltwater puddles multiple times a year. This is a random guy just trying to pay for parking while his feet are submerged in water. Another typical scene from Miami, from South Florida. In this photo, what you see a seawall that is supposedly there to stop the water from flooding the land, but both sides of the seawall you can see water. And also, it is not limited to like natural and residential areas. This last picture that I'm showing is from the Financial Center in Brickell. So it is really everywhere. The NOAA has this term they call ocean economy that consists of tourism, ship manufacturing, basically everything that is connected to the coastal economy. And this economy contributes 1.6% to the gross domestic product of the United States. So it is really important. And what they say is every time there's a flooding happening that interrupts this economy, so basically it causes economic losses. There are also scientific studies that show that hundreds of millions of dollars are already lost in real estate values because of flooding currently, or flooding that will happen within 10 or 20 years or so. But it's enough if you just like think about driving through salt water regularly, which damages vehicles and their undercarriage. So flooding, especially coastal flooding, causes economic losses. There's also like another problem that I identified when I dive into the issue, that is citizens do not have the means to make use of all the data and information that's available. And I will show you like why. So in the US, I think the most problematic thing is that there are multiple government agencies and departments engaging in the creation of data that related to coastal flooding. So this is a table from an upcoming paper that we are publishing. And it says that different government branches and also different agencies are engaged. For example, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the United States Geological Survey, which is the national mapping agency of the US, the Army Corps of Engineers. Also, there's a specific agency for emergency management, and there's the Environmental Protection Agency. So this is already scattered, but if we go down the rabbit hole, we see that even with a parent agency, there are multiple child agencies that make this picture even more scattered. For example, within NOAA, there's the National Weather Service, there's the National Hurricane Center, the Office of Coastal Management, and the Center for Oceanographic Products and Services. And all these child agencies have their own data portals, their own standards to produce data, and all these specific procedures. So for someone in the public, it is barely impossible to get something meaningful out of this big picture. A few examples of the data that's available freely in the US. NOAA publishes sea level rise inundation maps, basically. So they show the areas that will be inundated by a certain sea level change. Also, the Army Corps of Engineers provide statistics about the rate of the sea level rise, because it does not happen at the same rate everywhere in the world. It has a lot of local variations, so it is very important for planning to grab the locally relevant values, for example, in Miami or in the Netherlands. There are also products published by the Emergency Management Agency. The flood hazard zone maps, basically they are probability-based maps. They delineate areas that have a certain probability of being flooded in a year. Also, scientific model output. Another interesting data source that I think is being underutilized are the advisories and alerts coming from National Weather Service in the United States, or also from transportation departments, because they will need to know like the road conditions. These alerts are usually come in a machine readable format. And actually my phone, Google has integrated this in their service, so I usually get notifications when there's like a flash flood happening near my area. Also, there are a bunch of evidence-based products, for example, insurance claims, and it's all public data in the United States. So also the National Mapping Agency usually sends crews out in the field to trace the high watermark whenever there's like a big flooding event happening. So there are data, there's a lot of data that's available, but it's very scattered, unfortunately. And also, we can find room for volunteer geographic information and crowdsourced geographic information, and we try to fit those into this picture somehow. So obviously, citizen science is a great tool for engaging the public. At Florida International University, we have a dedicated center, the Sea Level Solutions Center, that organizes sea level solutions days once or twice a year, usually connected to high tides, king tides. And they send out volunteers to specific locations in the city to make measurements, like water depth, salinity, and other environmental measurements as well. And obviously, they record the geographic location of these measurements, so we can get an accurate picture of where flooding happened. They also have an app called Eyes on the Rise, just to basically visualize the possible sea level rise in the future. Catch the Tide Miami is something that I started last year. So basically, I created a website and I tried to create means for the public to contribute flood-related images or locations for us to gather. It is very unfortunate that within the same institutions, basically these projects existed next to each other. So right now we are trying to combine them and merge them into one project that we offer. So with Catch the Tide Miami, what basically I'm asking is, I'm asking people to take photos with geolocation enabled in their smartphone, and I'm asking them to upload that so that they can reach us, researchers. I also set up hashtags on social media, on Instagram and Twitter. I also have a dedicated Twitter account. not that active currently, but I have plans to like be more active on that platform as well. And also the idea is to make it as easy for citizens to engage in this activity as possible. So they can send photos on Flickr, upload them to Dropbox. There's also a citizen science app called Data where they can just directly take photos with their smartphones. I also conducted a Flickr experiment because other than this targeted project where I'm asking people to engage with my project, I believe that there's valuable content already on social media out there. So it's just a matter of trying to harness that and trying to like create a harvester that basically brings that information into a format that we can process. So last year I conducted this experiment with Flickr. I downloaded all the geocoded photographs in the greater Miami area, and I found 600,000 of them. Then I did like a very basic search for keywords in the description and the tags of those photographs. I was looking for a mention of flooding, floods, or sea level rise, or like some basic keywords. And I identified 200 that are possibly related to flooding. But these included also like, broken pipes and all that. So these photos needed to be further verified. And out of the 600,000, basically I ended up having 72 photos that were indeed about coastal flooding in Miami. This is a quick map showing the distribution of these photos. With yellow colors, you see all the 600,000 photos. Red dots here mean the 200 candidate photos. And basically the yellow, the blue ones, the light blue ones are the ones that were verified. And what you see here is that these photos are really close to the shore. So it means to me that there's content on Flickr that can be used in coastal research.
You have 2 minutes left, Levente.
All right, thank you. I'll wrap up. Also, social media has the potential to mine the opinion of citizens, just to get a sense of what they are thinking, whether they are interested in this issue or not. So volunteer geographic information, obviously, as we heard today before, it's a great tool to engage the public and to raise awareness of issues. It can also be used to validate inundation models because we don't usually make artificial floods just to see like how well our models perform. So crowdsourced data can be used to do that. And also, I found an interesting study from last year conducted by researchers in the US state of Virginia. They conducted a really large-scale citizen science event and asked people to trace the high water line during king tides. And what they did, basically, they took that data, they compared that with their operational flood models, and whenever the two data sources did not agree, they made hydrologic and hydrodynamic corrections to their model. For example, in this case, there was a bridge that was not included in their model. So the area on the other side of the bridge was not reported to be flooded by the model. But obviously, with the correction of the citizen data, they could correct their model to get like more accurate results. So as a summary, there's a lot of pieces of data that already exist, but it's scattered between agencies, data portals, and all that. It's really not easy to work with. And also, crowdsourced geographic information has the potential to add value to this already like large set of data that's available from official sources. But more research and more case studies are needed to see like how these things can be conducted in the future. So for next steps, we are trying to create a comprehensive solution for people to engage in this act, and also to gather all the information from all the sources and compile a data set that contains everything. We also plan to develop a web tool that can be easily used by the public. So our solution will have the use cases to inform citizens, which means the compilation of existing data into a format that they can easily digest. We would also like to prepare the residents for the potential impact. So I think that they will need to know what the coastal inundation translates to in terms of impact. So like what population it will affect, what are the perceived economic consequences of that. And also I would like to engage citizens more in the creation of the data. So how we are, we already have pieces of technology that we created. For example, a tool to visualize the potential impacts of sea level rise in Miami, and we have plans to create a mobile application as well. But of course, so at this point, I will need to acquire funding because it has overgrown the pet project status. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm open for questions. Thank you very much.
So thanks for joining at this morning hour, because it's morning at your place in Florida, right?
Yes.
So thanks really very much. There's one question from Peter. It would appear that there's great incentive for the public in the Miami, South Florida area to be involved and engaged. What do you think will be the main challenge for volunteer engagement for this particular problem? So for sea level rise and flooding, etc.
What I noticed so far when I tried engaging them myself is that I don't know how to reach them. So even though I have the social media presence, I don't know the right people that can convince masses of people to check out my project and potentially participate. So I think the main challenge is finding the right people that can bring more people in the project and can get it started.
Okay. Now, I had also a question, but I think, yeah, so we need to give some time to switch to the other session. That's why the break was built in. So then people can just either take a short break and then change to the keynote again. So I want to thank you again, all of you. I found it a very interesting session with interesting presentations. Thanks a lot for joining us. And I would like to remind you, if there is still something you would like to discuss, it can be done on the Slack channel. And if you don't know where that is, it is provided in the information sheet and on the website in the program. And please also share, for the presenters, please share your slides with us so that we can also disseminate that. Thanks again, and have a nice day, and see you later at the keynotes.